Granulating watercolours are super trendy at the moment, and you'll either love them or hate them. If you're watching this film, I'm guessing you love them. I thought it'd be really useful to know why certain colours granulate and others don't, and how we can encourage them to do it a bit more. And then I was looking at some of the, like Schmincke's recent super granulating watercolours they've just launched, and thinking, I'm sure I could do some of those mixes myself. So we'll have a go at that too, and I'll give you a recipe for Lunar Blue, which is a Daniel Smith's, very popular Daniel Smith's colour. So my name's Liz Chaderton. I'm a professional watercolour artist based in Berkshire, and every week I bring a tip, trick or technique that I wish I'd known ages ago. And this week it's all about granulation. Let's have a quick look at what I mean by granulation. And it's this lovely texture that you get in a wash where it goes a little bit sort of granular and separates out. That is granulation. In this pen and wash of a nice bit of pollution, I used granulation to effect in all the smoke bellowing out of these chimneys. And it's basically where the pigment particles separate out and sort of are uneven as they go into the little troughs and the little dips in your paper. There's another thing that people talk about, which is, I'll try and say it properly, flocculation. I hope I've said that properly. And that's where the pigment particles get attracted to each other, so they become bigger and they sort of separate out like that. And they are different things. Say granulation is just when the particles separate out unevenly. Flocculation is where they attract. That doesn't matter to you and I as artists because it's this effect. So is it good or bad? Well, that's up to you. Some people absolutely hate it, but at the moment it is super trendy, and wherever artists meet they're talking about the latest granulating colour from Daniel Smith, or, oh, you know, Schmincke have just brought out this. So if you like it, why don't we have a look at what causes it, and therefore we'll know how to get more of it. Granulation is caused really by three things. It's caused by the actual paint. Certain paints granulate. Cobalts are one of the granulating pigments. So I've got a cobalt blue deep and a cobalt turquoise. I would expect those to granulate. Then the earth colours granulate. There's a lovely yellow ochre. But a lot of earth colours, things like raw umber, burnt umber, sienna, ochre, aren't actually made from real earth pigments anymore. They're made from dyes and artificial pigments that are of a similar colour. So not all earth pigments will granulate. French ultramarine is one of the classic ones, and that's what you saw me using in that sort of pollution. So if you mix French ultramarine with, say, burnt umber, you get sort of very much a Payne's grey that will separate out and granulate beautifully. And then blacks. Mars Black in particular granulates fantastically, and let me show you a little swatch there of, that's just a wash of Mars Black, and you've got this amazing texture which is really beautiful. It's a right pain if you wanted a flat wash, but if you wanted a bit of variation, it's just gorgeous. So say the pigments you choose will really affect granulation. Very few red pigments granulate. The other thing that affects granulation is your paper. Because we've said it's where it separates into those little troughs, if your paper doesn't have a trough, there's nowhere for it to separate and sink into. So you'll get more granulation on a knot surface like this than you would on a hot press. So hot press is that totally flat, smooth surface, and you won't get much granulation. Rough paper, you'll get even more granulation. And then the third thing that affects granulation is the quality of the water. Well, quality and quantity of water that you're using. You need lots of water for the pigment to move around in so that it can settle out of it. So the more water you use, the more granulation you get. But also water with minerals in it, so hard water, will cause more granulation than soft water. So that immediately tells us how to get more granulation. Use those pigments, use lots of water, use mineral water or mineralated water, is that such a thing? And also leave it be so it can settle. If you keep swishing it around, those little particles can't settle into those troughs, so leave it be. You can use granulation medium, but I'm going to save that for another film. So I got to thinking, could we actually make some of those really expensive and very beautiful paints ourselves? I looked up the Daniel Smith's Lunar Black, or sorry, Lunar Blue I should say, and realised it was a mixture of Mars Black and Phthalo Blue. So I thought, well, I can do that. Why would I want to buy a tube of that when I've got both of those separately? And that got me to thinking, why didn't they mix Mars Black with, say, French ultramarine, which we know is a granulating pigment? They've mixed a really clear, beautiful, flat pigment like Phthalo Blue. And I think, this was my thought process, that staining colour will show through the variations of the granulating colour to make a more interesting mix. And I thought, if that holds true of, say, Phthalo Blue, why don't I choose some really bright, clear colours, mix them with the Mars Black, and see whether I come up with some more interesting granulating colours of my own. We'll start with that mix of Phthalo Blue. So here in my palette, I've got those 6 colours that I've put out there, and in the middle I've got some of my lovely Mars Black, and I'm just going to mix those up and see what colours we come up with. So there's a bit of the Phthalo Blue, which is one of my favourites, and I'm going to add some of that Mars Black. Now that might be a bit dark, so I might just swatch half a circle and then add some more blue. Oops. Now, if I want to increase the granulation, if you do it onto actually a wet paper, it lets all those pigments sort of float around and granulate. But I don't think I need have worried. Look at the granulation I'm getting there. Isn't that beautiful? If you wanted to paint the surface of the moon, that's all you need do. So I'm going to mix up a slightly stronger mix with a bit more blue in it and put that over there, and just to give us an idea of how much of the black needs to be in there to granulate and how much not. So let's try the same with the Phthalo Green. Again, a beautiful, clear, lovely staining colour, and to that I am going to add some of my Mars Black to get a really dark, yummy green. Let's wet this surface first, just to give the maximum opportunity for granulation. And then use some of that to see what happens. Oh, that's a nice colour. And maybe add a little more of that black so we've got some
comparison over here. Gosh, look at that go through the water. And then again, I'm just going to leave it be and let it sit there. But already you can see the granulation starting to develop. So I think I might be onto a bit of a winner here with my surmise of adding the granulation, a granulating colour to a transparent colour. You do get some really interesting effects. Probably helped by living in the Thames Valley where our water is incredibly hard. I deferred the kettle today, so I know quite how hard our water is. But anyway, right, let's now try with alizarin. And if you recall, I said getting a granulating red is really difficult. Just don't seem to be any. Let's pick up some of our Mars. Right, let's put that on there. Oh, look at that go. Gosh, that's lively on the surface, isn't it? Yeah, I'll be very interested in that one. Okay, let's go on to our Diox purple. I haven't put a huge amount of the black in there, so let's see whether that's going to granulate. Add a bit more black to my mix so we can just compare. Over that side and see whether we get any nice granulation. If we just look back to here, particularly that phthalo has worked beautifully. On the green it's worked beautifully. At the moment I'm not seeing much granulation going on with the alizarin, so I should be interested. Already on the half where I added more of the Mars Black, I can see the granulation starting to work. Now, this is going to be a real experiment. So this is a beautiful Gamboge. It's lovely. I'm trying to think who the manufacturer is. I'll look that up for you in a moment, but really beautiful, very transparent, lovely Gamboge. And I'm guessing it's going to go pretty green when mixed with the Mars Black. Ooh, yes, that's rather nice. And I hadn't pre-wet my paper, I'd forgotten that. Keep forgetting. I'm getting so excited by mixing up these colours and seeing what they're going to do. I forgot. Right, there we go. So, oh, that's a really nice green, isn't it? I wonder if that granulates, that'd be fantastic for sort of mossy colours and lichen or something like that. I will just add some more to half and put that over there just so we can see how much we need to add to get that real granulating impact. And then my final one I picked out, and say this was all just picking out the brightest, clearest colours I could spot in my palette, is quinacridone gold, which of course is just heavenly colour. So let's again just wet that to maximise our opportunities for granulation. And then, so that was Quin Gold mixed with Mars Black to make this wonderful mossy green, which I rather like as a colour. I hope that's going to granulate beautifully. And I might just mix up a strong, oh yes it was that, I couldn't remember which well I'd mixed that in. Oh, I don't know where, over this side, and just see whether we get more granulation or a stronger effect. So I'm going to let this dry and then we'll come back. So our swatches have dried now, and I think you'll agree there's some really interesting textures. I love my equivalent of Lunar Blue and how much it has granulated. So the phthalo green has mixed in, so I guess we'll call that Lunar Green. Disappointed with the alizarin. That just looks a bit
bleh. I would like to experiment more and see if different brands of alizarin work differently. It could be the one I use. This was a Jackson's own brand. Loving how the purple has granulated. It needed quite a bit of the black in there to get an interesting effect, but it is beautiful. Really love what the Gamboge did, and I said I'd tell you what brand that was. So it was a Rembrandt Gamboge, which is my favourite Gamboge. That's a mixture of pigments but has granulated beautifully. I'm very disappointed in the Quin Gold. Now that was an SAA Quin Gold. Maybe because it's got those 3 pigments in, it was just too much, but to me that just looks a bit bleh. So that was a disappointment, but as I say, these 4 absolutely super. And while I was waiting for that to dry, because I was loving these effects so much, I actually decided to swatch out a few more. So I used, again, looking through my paint box to find the brightest, clearest colours I could. This is green gold, which is already a mix of 3 pigments, and actually with the extra Mars black it's pretty horrible. But funnily enough, the actual green gold granulated all by itself, and I looked closely at what's in it, and it's already got its PBK 7 rather than 11, but that seems to granulate by itself. This is Poppy Red, which is a very orangey red. It's an SAA colour, but pretty good as a transparent red, and that's done some beautiful things. This Brown Madder, which is just such a stunning colour, it's again one of my favourites. That's Winsor & Newton, has done some beautiful effects, so I'm really happy with that. And then this Quin Sienna, that's a Daniel Smith's Quin Sienna. My goodness, has that granulated beautifully with the added black in. So you can imagine using that for, you know, the rusty hull of a ship or something. This Quin Rose has done all sorts of yummy things too, and this Permanent Rose as well. So I think we've got some really interesting results. The ones that don't seem to behave are the yellows. I mean, if you think back to this one, I was disappointed with that Quin Gold, and here the green gold as well isn't great. But otherwise, if you're looking for some quite subdued but very beautiful granulating colours, try adding in a little bit of that PBK 11 Mars Black, and you will create your very own range of granulating mixes that will add stunning textures to your artwork.